beyond the visible world that we touch, measure, and name. Many cultures believe there exists another realm, one that overlaps with our own but remains mostly unseen. This boundary is often described as a veil, a thin separation between the living and the ancestral, the material and the spiritual. The moments and places where this veil becomes fragile are known as liminal spaces. The word liminal comes from the Latin limen, meaning threshold, and it refers to states of being that are neither fully here nor fully there, neither past nor future, neither one identity nor another. In ancestral traditions, liminal spaces are not accidents of existence. They are sacred openings, moments when the ordinary world loosens its grip and deeper truths can surface. To understand liminal spaces, we must first understand how human consciousness experiences boundaries. We are creatures of categories, life and death, day and night, self and other, sacred and profane. Yet reality itself rarely conforms to such clean divisions. Dawn is neither night nor day, but both. A crossroads belongs to no single direction. A forest path dissolves the idea of clear beginnings and endings. In these in-between zones, the rules of everyday life soften. Sound travels differently. Time feels distorted. Memory stirs more easily. Fear and wonder coexist. It is here ancestral traditions tell us that the spirits of those who came before can step closer. Across many cultures, liminal spaces are treated with reverence because they are believed to carry spiritual density. They are places where the human mind becomes more receptive, more open, more vulnerable, and therefore more capable of perceiving what normally lies beyond awareness. In African spiritual systems, ancestral communication is rarely random. It is believed to occur when the soul enters a state of threshold, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. This might happen during grief, during illness, during deep meditation, or during major life changes. These moments loosen the soul's attachment to the surface of reality, allowing it to brush against deeper currents of existence. Liminality is not only about location. It is also about transformation. When a person is no longer who they were, but not yet who they will become, they stand in a liminal state. Adolescence, mourning, initiation rituals, marriage, exile, and healing are all threshold experiences. In such moments, identity itself becomes fluid. This is why ancestors are believed to appear most often when humans are undergoing profound internal shifts. The soul becomes porous, and memory, intuition, and spiritual sensitivity intensify. What feels like confusion to the modern mind is seen in traditional belief systems as a sacred vulnerability, a moment when wisdom from beyond can enter. Dreams, too, are liminal by nature. They suspend the logic of the waking world, blending memory, symbol, emotion, and imagination. Many ancestral cultures believe that dreams are not mere hallucinations of the mind, but bridges between worlds. In sleep, the conscious self loosens its grip, and the deeper layers of the soul become active. This is why ancestors often appear in dreams, not because they cannot speak during the day, but because the soul cannot listen while it is too anchored in the noise of ordinary reality. Even nature itself participates in liminality. Rivers are neither land nor sea. Forest edges blur civilization and wilderness. Mist dissolves outlines. Echoes belong to neither voice nor silence. These natural thresholds have always been associated with spirits, ancestors, and unseen forces. Not because they are frightening, but because they remind humans that reality is not as solid as it appears. In these places, one can feel watched, not in danger, but in presence. Modern societies tend to erase liminality. Artificial lighting eliminates dusk. Schedules eliminate waiting. Noise eliminates silence. Screens eliminate stillness. In doing so, we lose contact with the in-between, and with it, our sensitivity to ancestral presence. Yet the human soul still longs for thresholds. This is why people seek solitude, wilderness, meditation, music, ritual, and storytelling. These are modern attempts to recreate liminal states where meaning can surface beyond logic. To explore liminal spaces is not to escape reality, but to deepen our relationship with it. These thresholds remind us that existence is layered, that time is not always linear, and that identity is not fixed. In ancestral belief systems, the dead are not gone. They're simply relocated. Communication with them does not require supernatural powers. Only the willingness to step out of rigid certainty and into the sacred ambiguity of the threshold. And it is there between what is known and what is felt that the veil becomes thin and the ancestors begin to speak. Throughout human history, certain places have never been considered ordinary. Long before modern architecture and mapped coordinates, people sensed that some landscapes carried a deeper resonance, as if the earth itself were whispering stories from beyond the present moment. These locations became known as sacred gateways, spaces where the boundary between the living and the ancestral felt thinner, more permeable, more alive. In ancestral belief systems, the physical environment is not merely a backdrop for human life. It is an active participant in spiritual exchange. Mountains do not only rise, they listen. Rivers do not only flow, they remember. Forests do not only grow, they witness. Burial grounds, for example, are not simply places of rest for the dead. They are portals of continuity where time folds upon itself. The living walk among those who came before, not as strangers, but as extensions of the same lineage. In many African traditions, the soil that holds the bones of ancestors is considered spiritually charged, saturated with memory, wisdom, and presence. To stand upon such ground is not to stand alone. It is to be surrounded by layers of unseen kinship, by stories that have not dissolved, by voices that have not vanished. Sacred groves and ancient trees often function as living shrines. Their roots descend into darkness while their branches stretch toward the sky, embodying the very principle of liminality, between worlds, between realms, between forms of existence. These spaces are not chosen at random. Communities believe that spirits gather where natural energies converge, where silence deepens, where the air itself feels heavier with meaning. Such places invite reflection, but also reverence. One does not enter them casually. One enters with intention, with humility, with offerings, with listening. Caves, too, hold powerful symbolic weight. They resemble wombs of the earth, places of origin and return. In their darkness, the senses recalibrate. Vision weakens, but intuition sharpens. Sound echoes in unfamiliar ways, creating the feeling that one is never truly alone. Many traditions describe caves as thresholds where souls pass, where ancestors dwell, or where revelations occur. The deeper one walks into such spaces, the more one leaves behind the certainty of the surface world. This descent mirrors the spiritual act of entering liminality itself. Water is perhaps the most universal gateway. Rivers, lakes, and oceans appear endlessly in ancestral stories as borders between worlds. Water moves, transforms, reflects, and conceals. It carries voices and erases footprints. It connects distant lands while separating them. In many traditions, offerings to ancestors are placed upon water, trusting the current to carry prayers into unseen realms. To stand at the edge of water is to stand at the edge of knowing. One can see the surface, but not the depths. Even the home can become a liminal space when treated as sacred. Ancestral altars, ritual corners, hearths, and doorways are not merely functional. They're symbolic thresholds. A doorway is neither inside nor outside. A hearth is neither flame nor ash. These everyday liminalities become powerful when infused with ritual, memory, and intention. In such spaces, communication with ancestors does not feel distant. It feels intimate woven into daily life. Sacred gateways do not demand belief. They awaken perception. When people enter them, they slow down. Their voices lower. Their movements become deliberate. The body responds instinctively, as if it remembers something the mind has forgotten. These reactions are not superstition. They are echoes of a time when humans lived in constant dialogue with the unseen. Modern culture often dismisses these spaces as symbolic, metaphorical, or psychological. Yet symbols have always been the language of the soul. To reduce sacred gateways to mere imagination is to misunderstand their purpose. They do not need to be scientifically proven to be spiritually meaningful. Their power lies not in what they are, but in what they allow. Connection, reflection, remembrance. When humans step into sacred gateways, they are not seeking ghosts. They are seeking continuity. They are seeking reassurance that they are not alone in time, that their struggles are not isolated, that their existence is part of a much larger story. And it is within these spaces, where land becomes memory and silence becomes language, that the ancestors are believed to draw near, not to haunt, but to guide. If liminal spaces exist in the landscape, they also exist within time itself. Not all hours are equal in the eyes of ancestral traditions. Some moments are believed to carry a heavier spiritual weight, as if time occasionally slows, thins, or folds in on itself. These are the moments when the ordinary rhythm of life softens, and something deeper can be felt moving beneath the surface. Midnight, dawn, dusk, full moons, eclipses, seasonal transitions, and the turning of the year are not simply points on a clock or calendar. They are thresholds. They are moments when one state of being dissolves and another has not yet fully formed. In many cultures, midnight is not feared but revered. It is the quietest hour when the world seems to hold its breath. Human activity recedes and the noise of intention fades. In this stillness, the soul becomes more perceptive. Without distractions, people become more aware of their own thoughts, memories, and intuitions. Ancestral traditions suggest that spirits move most freely when human consciousness is least guarded. It is not that ancestors choose darkness. It is that humans finally become quiet enough to listen. Dawn and dusk carry their own kind of magic. At dawn, night loosens its grip but has not fully released it. At dusk, the day withdraws but does not disappear. These are moments of becoming. They mirror the liminal condition of the soul itself. Always in motion, always changing, always unfolding. Birds shift their songs. Shadows lengthen or shrink. Colors blur. These changes are subtle, but they awaken a deep awareness within us. It is in such moments that many cultures perform prayers, libations, and offerings, trusting that the threshold of time is as powerful as the threshold of place. Liminal time is not only found in nature's cycles, but also in human experience. Birth, initiation, marriage, illness, exile, grief, and death are not just events. They are transformations. They suspend identity. A person in mourning is no longer who they were, but not yet who they will become. A child entering adulthood stands between innocence and responsibility. A traveler leaving home occupies a space between belonging and displacement. These moments stretch the soul. They dissolve certainty. They open cracks in the structure of self. And through these cracks, ancestral presence is believed to flow. Grief is perhaps the most powerful liminal state of all. When someone loses a loved one, time itself seems to collapse. The past rushes forward. The future becomes uncertain. The present feels fragile. In such moments, many people report dreams, visions, sensations of presence, or sudden memories that feel alive. Traditional belief systems interpret this not as coincidence, but as contact. The mourner stands at the edge of two worlds, one where the loved one still existed physically, and one where they do not. This emotional threshold becomes a spiritual gateway. Seasonal transitions also carry ancestral meaning. The shift from dry to rainy season, from harvest to scarcity, from warmth to cold, all of these represent the impermanence of existence. In these moments, people are reminded that nothing remains fixed. Ancestral communication often occurs during festivals tied to these cycles, not as superstition, but as acknowledgement of cosmic rhythm. The ancestors are not outside time. They're woven into it. Modern life flattens time. It divides existence into minutes, deadlines, and schedules, stripping it of its sacred texture. But the soul still recognizes thresholds. That is why people feel strangely emotional at sunsets, birthdays, funerals, and turning points. Something ancient stirs within them. Something that remembers when time was not measured but felt. In ancestral understanding, time is not a straight line. It is a circle, a spiral, a breathing organism. The past does not vanish. It hums beneath the present. The future is not distant. It whispers backward. Liminal moments remind us that existence is layered, not linear. And when time itself becomes thin, when it hesitates between what was and what will be, the ancestors are believed to step closer, not bound by clocks, but guided by memory, connection, and unfinished love. When humans enter liminal states, whether through place, time, emotion, or transformation, they do not merely step into silence. They step into a realm of messages. Ancestral communication, according to many traditions, is not loud, direct, or theatrical. It does not usually arrive as clear sentences spoken aloud. Instead, it comes as impressions, symbols, sensations, dreams, intuitions, and subtle disruptions of ordinary perception. These messages do not demand attention. They invite interpretation. Dreams are perhaps the most common doorway through which ancestors speak. In dreams, logic loosens, memory rearranges itself, and identity becomes fluid. The dreaming mind does not question the impossible. It accepts the presence of the dead as naturally as it accepts flying, falling, or time reversal. This is why many cultures believe dreams are not imaginary experiences, but real encounters that occur beyond the limits of waking consciousness. An ancestor appearing in a dream may not speak in words, yet their presence carries emotional clarity, comfort, warning, guidance, or unresolved longing. These feelings are considered messages in themselves. Visions, too, arise in moments of deep emotional or spiritual vulnerability. A person may see a familiar face in firelight, hear a name whispered by the wind, or feel a sudden sensation of being watched, not with fear, but with recognition. These experiences often happen when a person is alone, grieving, meditating, or undergoing a major life change. In ancestral belief systems, such moments are not hallucinations. They are encounters occurring on a different layer of reality, one that overlaps with the physical but is not bound by it. Omens and signs form another language of ancestral communication. Animals behaving unusually, sudden weather changes, repeated symbols, or meaningful coincidences are interpreted not as random, but as intentional patterns. A bird appearing at a funeral, a snake crossing a path, a tree falling without explanation. These moments are not meant to be decoded like puzzles, but felt like poetry. Their meaning emerges through intuition, memory, and cultural understanding. Elders and diviners often serve as translators of this symbolic language, helping communities understand what the ancestors are expressing. Possession and trance states are among the most dramatic forms of communication. In certain rituals, individuals enter altered states of consciousness where ancestral spirits are believed to speak through their bodies. Their voice may change. Their posture may shift. Their words may contain knowledge the person could not consciously know. These events are not treated as performances. They are sacred encounters, approached with reverence, preparation, and collective support. The possessed individual is not erased. They become a bridge. Not everyone hears the ancestors the same way. Some feel sudden emotional waves without knowing why. Some experience physical sensations, chills, warmth, pressure, or lightness. Some receive insights that feel foreign yet familiar. Others simply feel compelled toward certain decisions, guided by an invisible current. Ancestral communication is not uniform because human perception is not uniform. Each soul translates messages through its own sensitivity. What all these forms share is subtlety. The ancestors do not shout. They whisper. They nudge. They suggest. This is not because they are weak, but because force would violate the sacred principle of free will. Guidance is offered, not imposed. The living must choose whether to listen. Modern thinking often dismisses these experiences as psychological, emotional, or neurological. And while the mind certainly plays a role, ancestral traditions do not separate mind and spirit so easily. They understand consciousness as layered, not singular. What modern science calls imagination, traditional cultures may call perception. What science calls coincidence, tradition may call pattern. Neither view must cancel the other. They speak different languages about the same mystery. The greatest mistake is to assume that communication must look dramatic to be real. In ancestral belief systems, the most powerful messages are often the quietest. A sudden calm, a feeling of being accompanied, a deep knowing without explanation. These moments shape lives more profoundly than any loud vision ever could. To receive ancestral messages is not to escape reality. It is to deepen one's participation in it. These voices from the threshold do not pull the living backward. They guide them forward. They remind people that they are not isolated moments in history, but living echoes of countless lives before them. And in this realization, fear begins to dissolve. For the ancestors do not speak to terrify. They speak to remind. They remind the living of who they are, where they come from, and what still remains unfinished within them. And it is through this quiet, symbolic, deeply personal language that the boundary between worlds becomes not a wall, but a conversation. To live with an awareness of liminal spaces is not to retreat from the modern world, but to inhabit it more deeply. It is to recognize that beneath the speed, noise, and certainty of contemporary life, there still flows an older rhythm, one that moves through memory, ancestry, and the unseen layers of existence. Even in cities filled with artificial light and constant motion, humans continue to encounter thresholds. They appear in moments of loneliness, creative inspiration, heartbreak, healing, migration, loss, and transformation. These are not weaknesses of the human experience. They are its sacred openings. Modern society often teaches people to rush through these moments. Grief is to be resolved. Confusion is to be fixed. Silence is to be filled. Yet ancestral traditions suggest something radically different. That these in-between states are not problems to solve, but doorways to enter. They are the places where the soul stretches, where identity softens, where deeper meaning can be felt. When people allow themselves to remain in these spaces without immediately demanding clarity, they begin to hear quieter truths about who they are and what they carry. Ancestral wisdom does not ask humans to abandon science, logic, or progress. It asks them to remember that not all knowledge arrives through measurement. Some knowledge arrives through sensation, intuition, symbolism, and emotional resonance. It arrives through stories that refuse to fade, through dreams that linger, through feelings that cannot be easily named. These are not errors in perception. They're forms of perception that modern culture has forgotten how to value. To acknowledge ancestral presence is not to become trapped in the past. It is to understand that the past is alive within us. Every habit, fear, instinct, and longing we carry is shaped by countless lives before our own. When ancestors appear in dreams, in moments of intuition, or in symbolic encounters, they're not dragging us backward. They're reminding us that we are part of a continuum, not a solitary point in time. Liminal awareness transforms how we relate to suffering. Instead of viewing pain as meaningless, it becomes a threshold of understanding. Instead of seeing uncertainty as failure, it becomes a sacred pause. Instead of fearing the unknown, it becomes something to approach with curiosity. This does not romanticize hardship, it dignifies it. It allows people to find meaning without needing answers. In a world obsessed with clarity, liminal spaces teach us the power of mystery. They teach us that not everything needs to be explained to be real. Some things need only to be felt, honored, and remembered. The ancestors do not offer perfect solutions. They offer perspective. They remind us that every generation struggles, doubts, loves, and searches. And yet, humanity continues. To live between worlds is not a curse. It is the human condition. We are always becoming, always shedding, always remembering. We're never fully who we were and never fully who we will be. In that in-between, we are most alive. And perhaps that is the greatest message the ancestors offer. Not instructions, not commands, but companionship. A reminder that even when we feel lost, we are walking paths that have been walked before. Even when we feel alone, we are standing among echoes. Even when the future feels uncertain, we are not unaccompanied. For beyond the veil, beyond the limits of what can be seen and named, there is not emptiness. There is memory. There is connection. There is presence. And in the sacred space between what we know and what we feel, the ancestors are not waiting. They are walking with us.